Okay, so we're a couple of minutes past the hour, so I've started the recording and we can get started with the webinar. The recording along with the slides will be shared afterwards by email, and so you'll be able to check them out or send them to a colleague if somebody couldn't attend today. Also, I'm joined by my colleague Remy, who probably many of you know from EPD Publishing, and Remy will help answer some questions throughout using the Q&A function in Zoom if you want to. And the plan is to have time left over at the end anyway to do live Q&A. So let's see how we go for time. With that in mind, let's take a look at the agenda for today. So what we have first are general improvements. So the first one is project folders, which maybe you've seen already. We'll talk a little bit about their Cyber Essentials IT security certification, and then other general improvements that have been made to the software. In terms of software updates, quick note on generating EPDs in FES plus A2, so EN 15804 plus A2 format for INES in France. We'll recap over again on EPD Hub version 2 tool and EcoEvent 3.8 data. I presented these slides last time as well, but some people aren't yet migrated or may still be interested to learn about that. So we'll talk about that again. A new topic, EPD Hub verification portal. So that's something that is in trial at the moment, and I'll just show you what it's about so that you've got a sort of heads up on that development. In terms of best practices, we'll look at some of the new Help Center articles and those that have been updated to talk about topics like EcoEvent 3.8 and balancing biogenic carbon and energy. And we also have some tips for verification and publishing to help save you some time during that process. And I'll also mention about the option to register for our EPD bootcamp for 2023 is now open. And in the webinar wrap up, I'll also just provide information about a previous webinar we did on concrete EPD tool, if that's relevant or interesting for any of you, as well as time at the end for Q&A. But yeah, feel free to drop questions into the chat or rather the Q&A function as we go, and Remy will help to answer them or flag them to me to answer live as relevant. So let's move on to first topic, which is general improvements. So project folders, this is an expert level feature. So I see a few of you on this call have got expert level licenses, so you'll already have seen this hopefully. It is a feature that's been requested quite a lot from clients. So basically what it allows you to do is to create folders on the main page of One-Click LCA so you can organize your projects better. So we can see here across the top, this is an example from building level account where they have BREEAM projects, Green Star projects, LEED projects, and other projects. Yours might look more like product portfolios or product ranges or something like this, where you can actually put multiple projects in here. So you can see this first one, BREEAM projects, has 17 projects available to you in it. There's quite a lot of text on this slide, but I'll try to break it up into the paragraph. So the access for these folders, so they're created at company level. So you have to have a company account to use the feature, which all of you have. So that's no worries there. The folders are automatically accessible to all users that are part of the company account, but they're not accessible to members of other company accounts. So they're not shared between companies and they can't be shared between companies. Only main users of company accounts are able to create, delete, and rename folders. But all users of the company account can move projects between those folders. And if you create new projects, you can save them directly into those folders. Project access doesn't change with folder access. So it's independent of folders. So basically, you can have access to all of the company folders, but your rights to see individual projects that are within those folders are still managed at the project level. So it's possible, if I go back one slide, you can see here that this, maybe you can see it if it's too small, it shows that there's 17 projects available to you, but the total projects in this folder are 19. So there's actually 2 projects in this folder that I don't have access to, essentially. So access to projects doesn't change. As mentioned before, just to reiterate that different company accounts can't access each other's shared folders, even if they have shared projects. And when it comes to deleting folders, if you delete the folder, it doesn't delete all the projects that are inside it. All of the projects basically just pop back out onto the main page, and they're just listed individually. Where to create these folders is in the add one. So in the same place where you add a new project. So here we're looking to click on product to create product LCA project, and we have this option for folder. Then this pop-up will show where you give the folder a name, and then just click create, and then you'll have the new folder available. If you use the main page in the file view, then to manage the folders, you'll see these 3 little buttons in the top corner of the folder name, and there you can rename and delete them, as long as you're a main user of the account. When you see individual projects that are not yet in a folder, like this one here for a new apartment building Stockholm, you see this little green folder icon. And if you click on it, you get this option here to move it to one of the already created folders. In the list view, it looks a little bit different. So the list view, the 3 buttons are all the way over here on the right-hand side. And if you click it, you get those same options to rename and delete. And this little folder icon appears at the very end in the list view, where you can click it, and then you see this same option to move the project to one of those already created folders if you want to. A sneak peek into a feature that's going to happen, or is planned to happen at least in the next software release, is that you'll be able to drag and drop projects into the folder. So I could just click on this new school Paris and drag it into whichever folder that I need to. And that's not available yet, but it's planned for the next release. Also, when you create projects, you'll have this as an additional option. So at the point where you create the project, you'll see this additional section showing folder. Do you want to actually include it directly into a new folder already? So that was it for the folders feature that's available on Expert licenses. For Cyber Essentials, this is across the software. So basically, we completed this Cyber Essentials certification to protect one-click LCA, your data, and so on from the most common cyber attacks. So a copy of that certificate and basically what Cyber Essentials is all about are linked here on these slides, so you'll be able to check those out once the slides are shared. So we're committed to continuing this process and also moving forward for Cyber Essentials Plus certification as well. Other general improvements include performance of the main page. So maybe you've seen a change in this, but the projects now load a lot faster on the main page. So it doesn't matter if you have hundreds or even thousands of projects there, it should load a lot faster. And a previous selection for sorting of projects, if you changed how you see your projects, they are retained for your next session. So whatever sorting you did today, if you come back tomorrow, you'll see the exact same sorting again. We also integrated quite a lot of data points during Q1. So in January, more than 3,000 EPDs. In February, over 400. In March, over 700. So over 4,000 EPDs integrated in Q1. And as well as that, we updated around another 650 EPDs as well. As always, details of database updates can be found in our help center where there's an article that shows what data points are being updated week over week. So for the general updates. Next we go to software updates. First topic here for EPDs in FDS plus A2 format. So for those that are interested in publishing with INES in France, you can now download this FDS report, which is compliant with 15804 plus A2 standard directly in the software. And this is available in the EPD Hub version 2 tool. So we'll talk a little bit about migrating to that tool shortly if you haven't already. Repeating topic from last time is this, we're calling it migration or transition from EPD Hub version 1 tool to EPD Hub version 2 tool, and with it EcoInvent 3.8 data. So the version 1 tool uses 3.6 data, as does the pre-verified EPD generator, which is used for publishing with international EPD system. And so that uses 3.6 data. But the version 2 of EPD Hub tool uses EcoInvent 3.8 data. And there have been quite a few changes with EcoInvent 3.8, and I won't go through all of that today for those that have already heard me discuss that topic. But basically this tool is available, and if you haven't already and want to move to use that tool and EcoInvent 3.8 data, please do let us know. We have a couple of surveys that have been out for a number of weeks, maybe even months at this point, to fill in if you do want to switch to those tools. And the reason why I bring it up today is because the next migration is planned for the week starting May 15th. So the middle of next month, there's a migration planned. So if you want to be part of that migration, please let us know, and we can basically send these surveys to you. They are hyperlinked in these slides when you receive them, so you can click them and already answer in there, so that you're part of that next migration, and you'll have the tool and the data ready to go. So yeah, let's keep in touch if you want to do that migration. Next then is the EPD Hub verification portal. So this is also something that has been requested quite a lot from clients, so that to avoid the sending back and forth of documents via email when you submit your EPD for verification and publishing. So EPD Hub has created this new portal. It is linked directly to our software, and accounts for this portal aren't yet set up for you, but we can help create them. So we'll be doing that in due course, or reaching out to you in due course about getting that set up. And essentially then how it works is that first step is to log into the EPD Hub account. So once you have an account created on the portal, you have to be logged into it to get this process started. So you've got to be logged in there in the background. Step 2 then is to go to the results page within One-Click LCA. So whichever the design is that will be the one for this EPD, so where the EPD is actually the results are going to come from, and the EPD document is going to come from, you go to those results in the software. And on the results page, you have this more actions in the top right hand corner. And if you click on this more actions, this is where you usually generate your Word document and so on. There's also this new option down here called Submit to EPD Hub. So you click on this, and when you do that, step 4 sort of starts automatically. So you'll see this kind of a loading wheel, and what that's doing is then opening the EPD Hub portal. So that's why it's important to be logged into the EPD Hub account already. After that, you'll be taken to the EPD Hub portal, and step 5 here you see in this screenshot that says add as new product or declaration. So here you can add the project that you want to move forward for EPD verification, either as a new product or as an existing one. So if you already have a submission in the portal already. And then in step 6, the final part is to choose this declaration, as what it's called in the platform, and submit it to verification. So you can see this button here, submit for verification. You can see all of the products that you have already in the portal. So maybe you've got multiple different submissions ongoing or already verified, as we can see here in some of the status updates. And so you just choose whichever one it is that you want to submit for verification at this point. And it's also possible that you can submit multiple declarations at the same time. So this is something that's very new. I believe the pilot trial is ongoing or starting this coming week. So once that goes well and we have the all clear from EPD Hub to start rolling this out across the board, then either we'll create accounts for you or reach out to you to get these accounts set up. So so yeah, keep your eye out for communication on that coming very soon. All right, next topic then, best practices for product LCA modeling. Some Help Center articles that are new or have already been updated are shown here. So update Econvent 3.8. An email went out about this topic actually today, just not too long before this webinar started. So maybe you haven't seen the email yet, but I'm going to talk about it in a couple of slides time. Balancing energy and biogenic carbon content feature. This was a new article we created based on that feature. But I'm going to update you on the current status and future status of this particular feature in a moment. Then product LCA EPD data collection and import form. So just to note that the import form has been updated, and it also includes the selection of the end of life stage. So in version 2 of the EPD Hub tool, C1 to C4 is in one question within the end of life query in the software. So now you can choose which end of life stage is selected for which input in the import form. And last topic there is on the different product categories and available templates. So 3 new templates were added to the list. So under the plastic-based products and systems category, there's a polyester geogrid LCA template. For metal-based products, there's a loading dock, which is quite a detailed one. And then under HVAC equipment, we've added a template for panel radiator. So if those product categories or types of products are relevant for your portfolio, then please let us know. So let's go on to the topic of the update to Econvent 3.8. As I said, an email went out about this just today for those of you who are already using Econvent, Econvent 3.8 with EPD Hub version 2 tool. If you aren't using EPD Hub version 2 tool yet, then this email was not sent to you because it won't be relevant until the point comes that you use 3.8. But for those of you that are already using EPD Hub version 2 tool and the Econvent 3.8 data, and this is relevant, so that's why you should have received the email. There are full details in this article that's linked in the Help Center. So the Help Center article is called Update to Econvent 3.8. And what this update concerns are the categories of global warming potential biogenic and use of energy as energy and as material. So PE or E, PE or M, PE NRE, PE NRM, and the totals of those categories as well. So the email didn't go into a huge amount of detail because maybe most of it isn't relevant for your exact calculations, and so the details are more in this article. And I'll just summarize the main points from it. And the first 2 points are the most relevant, the most important for, I think, most of you. So the first one being biogenic CO2 emissions not related to the product biogenic carbon content were removed. So you may have seen through your LCA studies that some data points from eco-events that aren't bio-based materials have biogenic CO2 emissions. And they're usually related to biogenic carbon content from either materials or fuels or something like this in the upstream processes. So not actually related to carbon content of the material itself. So it's not a bio-based material. So this update to EcoInvent 3.8 removes those biogenic CO2 emissions from products that basically are materials that shouldn't have it. And the second one then for treatment data sets, PERM and PENRM values that were not zero were set to 0. So again, you may have seen some waste treatment data sets that actually have values for PERM and PENRM that potentially don't need to be there, shouldn't be there, and these in some of them were already 0, but for ones that weren't, they were set to 0. Why I have mentioned these first 2 bullet points as being the most important is because they're relevant for balancing, which we'll touch on the next slide. The next 3 bullet points, so 3, 4, and 5, they're not as relevant, but still important information, and some of you may be interested in sort of what's happening in the background. And that PERT, so the totals, PERT and PENRT, they've been recalculated to include PERM and PENRM. So they, at least in some instances, weren't included, so they have been included now. For some data sets, the values of PENRE in EcoInvent 3.9 were adopted, and you can read more about those in the details. And the PENRT values were assumed equal to abiotic depletion potential of fossil fuels in certain cases. So for some values where this made sense to do it, it was updated. So when is this going to be done? It's scheduled in the next software release, which is set for early May, so next week. And why we've made these changes is to ensure better quality, better consistency, and better usability of the EcoInvent data for EPD creation. And the second point is that it's also part of the validation of our databases. So we have an ongoing tool pre-verification with the international EPD system at the moment, and as part of that, we also made this change. So what do you need to do with this change? Basically, you don't have to do anything, and there's no specific action that you have to take. But if you're using EcoInvent 3.8 data already, and you update a design after this change is in place, then the values for GWP bio and the energy as energy and as materials, they will update. And this is important because of balancing and transference of biogenic carbon and energy. So if you've done the calculations manually, where you look at the data card to see how much biogenic carbon there is, how much energy there is, and then you're multiplying that by the quantity of the material that you have in the LCA, this may change because the values will have been updated, particularly when it comes to those materials that had biogenic carbon content that maybe shouldn't have had, and for energy and waste treatment materials that is being offset when you do your balancing. So it's important to pay attention to the balancing and the transfer if those values have changed, and you'd be able to see that in your results to see if your balancing is off. So good to keep that in mind. I'm going to check the chat because there was a question, and I just want to see if it's relevant for this discussion. Okay, so no, there's no question in the chat. Oh no, they're in the Q&A. Hi, is biogenic carbon still taken into account in packaging? It will be if the packaging materials are bio-based. So if you're talking about pallets, cardboard, paper, things like this, then the biogenic carbon content will still be there. Okay, so continuing with the topic of balancing energy and biogenic carbon content, so to update on this feature. So the current article in the Help Center has this sort of note at the top of it. So that mentioning that the feature is under development and it's going to evolve. And in the meantime, we recommend that you do this balancing manually. And the update is that in this upcoming software release, energy balancing is going to be removed from the feature, and it will be renamed as biogenic carbon balancing. So it's only going to do biogenic carbon balancing, basically. This is being done to satisfy requirements of different LCA modeling methods that may be relevant for different products. So we basically don't mandate that when you do biogenic carbon balancing, you also have to do energy balancing. So we're going to separate them. And the first part of this is that the feature no longer applies to balancing energy, but it can be used again for balancing biogenic carbon. And then in the future, we'll reintroduce a brand new feature, separate feature for energy balancing. So while today it's called energy and biogenic carbon balancing, when the next software release is made, it will be just biogenic carbon balancing. And then a new feature will be added in the future to handle the energy balancing. So, so continue to do it manually for now, but once the software release is in, then you'll be able to use the feature again for biogenic carbon balancing, but the energy balancing continues to be manual until we add the separate feature. I'm going to check the Q&A again, just on this one. This one, okay, well, let me take it anyway, because it mentions about EcoEvent 3.8. If I want to create a project/sister EPD based on an EPD created in EPD Hub version 1 tool and EcoEvent 3.6, does the project sister EPD have to be created in the same way, or can it be created in version 2 and EcoEvent 3.8? This is a really good question. I don't have the actual answer to hand, but what I would like, my recommendation on this is that hopefully this project that was in EPD Hub version 1 tool and EcoEvent 3.6, you have migrated. So it's already been migrated to the new tool and EcoEvent 3.8. If you haven't yet done the migration, you want to be part of it, the next one that happens in mid-May, then let us know and it'll be migrated. And then basically you'll have the design in the new tool and with EcoEvent 3.8 data. So it'll make it a lot easier for you to create the sister EPD. The sister EPD, the rules around sister EPDs, if I can remember off the top of my head, is that they have the limitation of +/- 50% in terms of emissions, and changing from 3.6 to 3.8 shouldn't go above that. So I don't see any reason why your sister EPD can't be with the new tool and with the new database, even if the let's call it parent EPD is on the old tool and the old version of EcoEvent. I don't know who asked this question, but what I'll do is I'll take note of it, and perhaps I can send I'll check with EPD Hub on this, and then I can send a response to that question with the webinar recording link and the slides afterwards, so that everybody gets it. I don't see there being any issue with it, but let me just double check anyway. There's another question about transferring of energy, so let me take that as well. So according to the Academy materials, so One-Click LCA Academy course, transferring of energy, so PERM, PENRM, And biogenic carbon to module D should be done only if the material is reused, recycled, or exiting the system as secondary fuel. Yes. Can you please clarify what is meant with secondary fuel in this case? Is it some synthetic fuel derived from waste? Meaning, could you point out the difference to the incineration where waste is used as fuel in the incineration process? Yeah, okay. So yeah, good question, because it's maybe not always clear the differentiation between these two different end-of-life options. So what we're talking about is end-of-life option 3, which is material as secondary fuel, and end-of-life option 4, which is incineration with energy recovery, or in option 5, incineration without energy recovery. Essentially, the difference between the two is the material processed and then, let's say, sold, or there's a market for it as a fuel, or is it just incinerated as it is? If we take the example of wood, for example, wood can be chipped and then sold as wood chips. So this is secondary, this secondary material is then used as fuel. There's a market for buying wood chips to use as fuel. So you can use this end-of-life option 3. But if we take plastics, so plastics get ground down and then they can be recycled or incinerated. But there's no market existing for buying plastic as a fuel. Nobody's purchasing that to use those little grains or granulates of recycled plastic or ground down plastic to incinerate it. So actually, when you want to take this to the end of waste state, it's actually at the point where the plastic goes to incineration. So that's end of life option 4 or 5, depending on whether there is or isn't energy recovery. So this sort of understanding when you reach the end of waste state is important here. So already when wood is chipped, it could consider to be reaching the end of waste state because there's a market to buy wood chips as fuel. That's not the case when it comes to plastics. So the difference between the two is when do you reach the end of waste state, and then you can decide which option to use. I hope that helps clear it up a little bit, but please let me know if it's still a little bit unclear. I'm not sure if Remy is still typing an answer for this as well, so I won't mark this question if Remy is still typing. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. So now we'll talk a little bit about the common mistakes maybe, or things that get like omitted commonly in EPD verification when the EPDs have been submitted. So thanks to our EPD delivery service team for putting some of these together, some of these tips for us. Following these tips and keeping an eye on these specific points will help your verification process go more smoothly and more quickly, and reduce the amount of comments basically that you get back. So the first one is about all of the default requirement sections in the EPD tool. So our software, as you've probably seen, has a template report, a template EPD document that you download, and the sections that are in it, they're all there for good reason. They are mandatory to fill in. They're based on the requirements from the program operator. So whether that be International EPD System or whether that be EPD Hub. So please ensure to fill in all of those requirements. And if there's a section that's not applicable, mark it as NA or with a dash, for example. So it's clear that you didn't forget about that section, but it's just not relevant for your particular study, so it's marked as such. The second one on ensuring the manufacturing diagram corresponds with the description in A1 to A3. So when you write about the process in A1 to A3, so what materials there are, what manufacturing steps they go through and so on, this should be matched by the flow diagram, or however it is that you have your manufacturing process chart, so that the verifier or any reader of the EPD can read the description and look at the chart, and the two things are sort of complementing each other. So that's quite important. When it comes to additional documentation, there are some things that you have to attach. For example, certificates of origin. So if you are claiming to use only renewable or green electricity, then you have to provide proof of that. If you don't do that up front, the verifier in all of the cases is going to ask for it. So already provide that up front. There are other things like your bill of materials, Excel, mass balance tables, other calculations that you may have used for balancing or something like this. And that kind of documentation, if you have it in good order, and it will help the verifier's understanding when they do the verification, then submit it along with the EPD already. So that again will reduce the amount of questions that the verifier comes back to ask. In terms of the images in the EPD, check that your logo, the company logo, is there. You have to include that in the EPD, and that the product image that goes on the cover page is specific to that product. Don't forget to fill in the material composition table. This is something that's quite often forgotten because it's in the product description query in the software. So maybe it's the very first query, so it can sometimes be left out. So be sure to include that. Again, it's mandatory. And also check your energy and biogenic carbon balancing before you submit. So check to see, has it been balanced correctly? Check the results tables to see, do you have the right amount balanced out when that material leaves the system, and that you have a total that's at least close to zero. It quite often happens that due to rounding of numbers, you don't end up with exact zeros, but check it beforehand, because that is something that the verifiers are checking. And some guidelines for what to write about the different life cycle stages. So in A1 to A3, have a clear description of the main processes, as well as the packaging materials. And again, that this is in line with the flow diagram that you provide for the manufacturing process. Include any details about wastes or losses during the production, and how those wastes and losses are handled. In A4, it's quite often that we use assumptions here. So explain those in the EPD for the verifier's benefit, but for anybody that you're going to send this EPD to, so they can understand exactly what is the A4 scenario. Similar comment for A5. If we've had to make assumptions about the scenario for installation, like what kind of energy or materials are required, is there any installation losses, include those assumptions in your details about your A5 scenario. And in end of life, so C1 to C4, check the waste flows so that you have mass balance, so that the right amount of materials are being sent to waste treatment in C3, C4 as the amount that's actually in the product at end of life. And how are these materials handled? Are they sent to recycling, incineration, landfill, whatever the case is, and have references for those scenarios on hand. If you document them in the EPD, in the notes to the verifier in the software, then it will make the verification process a lot more smooth. I'll just check the Q&A before I go to the next section. So there was a question here about, can you once more show from the software how to check the energy balance is okay? Yeah, so I'll do that. I have a very simple model that I can show in a moment. So let me do that. We're doing okay for time, so we should have time to do that. So let me jump there in a moment. Okay, so the next topic was EPD Bootcamp 2023. I think all of you that are in this session have done onboarding and training with us and are familiar with using the software. But for any of your colleagues, maybe who are asking questions about what is it that you're doing with all this data that you asked me for, or where did you create this EPD from, and so on, you can recommend that they attend the bootcamp. So this is 5 sessions, Monday to Friday, 2 hours, 3 to 5 p.m. CET. So there they'll get a good idea of what life cycle assessment for products and EPDs actually are, and why we need to actually create them. What are the key concepts, what using the software looks like, so how to use our EPD generator, and then how to actually generate the reports afterwards. This also might be quite useful for suppliers. So maybe you've been asking suppliers for data as well, and they're not sure why you're asking, and maybe indeed you've been asking them for EPDs, because if you've got supplier EPDs, then it makes it a lot easier for you to do your models, and you don't have to try to find like proxy data in Eco-Event, things like this. So if you do have suppliers that you're looking to create EPDs, then perhaps directing them to this bootcamp might give them a better idea of how to get started and why it is that you're asking for this kind of information. So please feel free to recommend this course to them. Okay, so before I go to the wrap up, let me go to the software. So just bear with me a second while I try to find this model. So I actually prepared this for one of you who's actually attending this call right now, so you'll recognize this. But for those of you who aren't aware of it, so everybody else, and this will be quite new. The Zoom controls are in my way a little bit there, but here we go. So here I have this this model, very basic. In this particular model, I just use a palette, a Euro palette from Eco-Event 3.9 as the example, because in Eco-Event 3.9, a palette has GWP biogenic, as we'd expect. It has PERM and it has PENRM as well. So it actually has all three things that we need to balance and to transfer. So I have option 1, which is reuse, option 2, recycling, and option 3, which is this fuel, this secondary materials as fuel. So I have all three options which require transfer in module D. So the question, I think, was maybe more related to going to the software to show how to check that the energy balance is okay. So I'll do it for all three. They're all pretty similar. So I'll just click here and go to view results. Okay. So in the first one, to look for energy balancing, the table of results that we look for is use of natural resources. So I'll open up this one. And I'll just click hide empty over here at the side, because I'm not interested in all of module B, for example. So I'll just click hide empty so the table looks a little bit more simple. And the first indicator is PERM, which is the second one. So use of renewable primary energy resources as raw materials. So I've got an input of one unit of pallet, and that pallet has 314.4 megajoules of PERM. So in A5, when the pallet leaves the system, I balance out the same quantity. So then so module D is not included in the totals. So then my total should be exactly a 0. It's minus 0.000931. So it's not quite a 0, and that's due to some rounding in the background. But it's very, very tiny amount. And if I bring up my calculator on the screen, we can check to see exactly what that is in percentage terms. So if I have 0.000931 divided by 314.4 megajoules, and let's multiply that by 100. So in percentage terms, it's 0.0003%. Actually, I think I might even left off 10, but it's a very, very small number basically. So so no verifier is going to have any worries about validating that this is okay, even though it's not an exact zero. So here we check PERM, and then here we check PENRM. So this is the fifth indicator across. So the pallet had 20.75 megajoules of energy in it. So when it leaves the system in A5, I balance out the same amount. And here I end up, actually the number is exactly the same due to rounding in the background. So this is just a positive value. I think that's more a coincidence than anything, but in any case, you can see here, the amount that goes in is balanced out. If I check the other one then, this is option 2. Same values in and out, same values in and out. And if I can work my way past the controls, I can put these controls out of the way here, and use of natural resources, same in, same out, and then almost zero, same in, same out, and also zero. So that's how you check if your energy is balanced correctly. Hopefully that helps. I'll go back to the slides for now. So in the wrap up, one thing that I wanted to mention before we get to the Q&A is concrete EPD tool webinar. So if any of you are working with concrete products, then you may be interested in this webinar. If you weren't able to attend, the recording is linked here on the slide, and also the slideshow that was presented. And basically, it's an end-to-end EPD generator for concrete products. So please check that out and let us know if you're interested in this particular tool. And then finally, we have still got some time for Q&A. I think we pretty much answered all of the questions that came in along the way, but let's just see if there's anything left. And Remy, you can let me know as well if anything needs any follow-up or anything like that. Otherwise, I'll just wait for a few minutes and see if other questions come in. Okay, so we got a question. So can I just sum up all the numbers under PERM and same for PENRM, and that just be close to zero, meaning inputs are positive values and outputs appear as negative ones? Yes, basically you can. It's just that you have to, the one thing that you need to keep in mind is that the balancing needs to be done when the material leaves the system. So in my pallet example, the pallet goes in A3. This is the case for packaging materials of your final product. The materials go in A3, and then they leave in A5 when the product is installed. But for products, raw materials, so the product materials go in A1. It's possible that you have production losses. So let's say you had 10% production losses or something like this. Then that 10% of material leaves in A3 as manufacturing waste. So you have to balance a little bit there in A3. Then the rest of the product, like the actual declared unit of the product, continues on to end of life. And at the end of life, then the product might be, let's say, in the case of concrete, 80% recycled in C3 and then 20% recycled, or 20% landfilled, something like this. Then you have to take that amount of energy and balance. So usually for concrete, there's not that much energy, but in plasticizer is one example. So the plasticizer, a little bit leaves in A3, we do a balance there. And then 80% leaves in C3, so we balance there. And then 20% goes to landfill in C4, and we balance there. And all of that amount that you balanced So if you sum up what was balanced in A3, in C3 and C4 together, it should be equal to the amount that went in A1. You don't have to do it at material level. So like if you, maybe that's more to your question, is that can I just check all of the values for PE, RM, PE, and RM? I don't have to just look at plasticizer. If they all leave during the same stages, then yes, you just sum them all up and balance them where they leave. One thing that you need to keep in mind that can be overlooked is that you have to compensate for any energy that's in the waste treatment data sets. So this is something that is being addressed in the next software release. So this update eConvent 3.8 I mentioned in one of the previous slides is going to remove PE, RM, and PE, NRM from waste treatment data sets. And that will mean you don't have to do this compensation. But let's pretend for today that, let's say my material, I input 1 kilo in A1, and it has 10 megajoules of energy. And in C3, it leaves 80% in C3 and 20% in C4. That means I have to balance 8 megajoules in C3 and 2 megajoules in C4. But if the waste treatment data set that I use in C3 also has energy in it, then I have to also include that with my balancing equation. So you may need to balance a little bit extra, because actually the waste treatment data set in C3 also includes this energy. So maybe that's a little bit not that it's important, because many people are still using eConvent 3.6, which won't have this update. But for those using eConvent 3.8, you don't need to worry about this so much, because the update that's going to happen with the next software release. If I go back to the software example that I was showing, and let's take, this one is the incineration one. So this is quite a good one actually. So in manufacturing A3, I have my pallet going in. Oops, wrong query. A1 to A3 rather. And so here we have our pallet going in, and then this will have 1 unit multiplied by, if I just look at the energy. So this is our 314.4 is what you saw on the results page that I showed. So this is the amount of PE RM. And then we also have this 20.75 of PE NRM. So then when we go to A4, A5, we have wood chipping as the data point. So I can check this one just to see in its environmental profile, does it have any energy as material? And this one doesn't. So I don't have to worry about offsetting it. But it does have GWP biogenic. So if I was to balance the total amount of GWP biogenic, it would actually be a little bit too much, because this wood chipping data point already releases some very small amount of biogenic carbon. So I offset the amount I need to balance here a little bit. So this is the type of thing that we're aiming to do with this update eConvent, but also when we reintroduce the energy balancing feature, that it will be able to handle this kind of compensation and the amount that needs to be balanced in a more automated way. Yeah, so it's a little bit tricky. I agree that it takes a little bit of, at the end of the day, it's multiplying numbers and subtracting a number or adding a number, but it's a little bit tricky, as you said, because you got to pay attention to all the different flows, and there are a number of different ways to do this. So you can do it at the material level by looking at the data cards and multiplying the values that you see here, or you can go to the results tables and take a look there. You can also download detailed reports and have a little bit more detailed insight into it. So there's quite a few different ways to do it. But if the topic is still a little bit confusing, of course, feel free to reach out to us in support, and we'll do what we can to try to help figure it out. Especially because we have this software update coming, and it will change a little bit how you need to do the balancing. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out if this topic is still posing some challenges. Any other questions or anything, any other feature that somebody might be interested for me to show? If there aren't any other questions for now, then thank you everybody for joining us today. We'll have another webinar just like this in Q3, so keep an eye out for that invitation. Otherwise, you know where to find us in support if you've got any questions about the software, and we'll of course be on hand to assist you as best we can. Thanks again. Have a good rest of the day. And for those of you enjoying a long weekend for May Day, I hope you have a good one, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.